Great evening, Pinellas County School families. Welcome to Thurgood Marshall Middle School, home of the Jaguars. I am proud principal Kevin Schottler. I'm so excited to have you here for our first ever PCS Listen and Learn with Superintendent Kevin Hendrick and the panel. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to our amazing panel and enjoy our Listen and Learn.
Thank you, Mr. Schottler, for hosting us tonight. Good evening and welcome everyone to the Connections Listen and Learn session. I am Seymour Brown, Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I will be your host and moderator this evening. The purpose of this series is to provide an opportunity for the stakeholders of Pinellas County to engage with the school board, superintendent, and district leadership, which is imperative in promoting continuous improvement for our students, families, staff, and community. Last year, the board and the superintendent committed to continuing the series of Listen and Learn sessions. The session here tonight at Thurgood Marshall Middle School is the third in a series of annual community meetings. These sessions represent their commitment to be visible in this community as we continue to strengthen partnerships both as a district and within our school communities. Hosting our sessions geographically allows the school board, superintendent, and district staff who serve those schools to be present and to hear directly from the stakeholders. PCS Community Listen and Learn sessions are open to all stakeholders, students, families, staff, partners, and community members. To start things off, I would like to give the board members and superintendent an opportunity to introduce themselves and welcome the stakeholders. School Board Chair Hines, would you like to start the introductions?
I'm very happy to. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Laura Hine. I'm currently chair of the Pinellas County School Board. I have two boys in our schools. I have an 8th grader who attends John Hopkins Middle School, and then I have a 5th grader who's here with me tonight, Garrett, who attends North Shore Elementary. And it was when my 8th grader was starting school, and I went through the lottery process and this idea of, all the parents around me with all this anxiety, where's he going to go to school? I thought, what's our neighborhood school? And so, but thus was the introduction to what can feel like a real quagmire of school choice and finding about school grades and all those questions we as parents ask. Through that process, through getting to know our neighborhood school, North Shore Elementary, which was a Title I letter grade D school at the time, I got very passionate about being sure that every school in our county is a good choice for your students so that we don't have to feel that kind of anxiety when we're going through that process. So that's what led me ultimately to ask to serve on your school board, and I appreciate that opportunity. I'm glad you're here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dawn Peters. I'm a school board member. I'm just finishing my second year on the Pinellas County School Board. My daughters attended Shore Acres Elementary School. They attended here at Thurgood Marshall Fundamental and then Northeast High School. So they were lifelong Pinellas County School students, and I was always involved in their schools, on the PTA, of course. Be careful, you could become a school board member yourself someday. But I went on to become a mentor and really valued that experience. And so now this is the next step in my serving my school district. So I'm very happy to be here, and thank you all for allowing me to serve here on the Pinellas County School Board and to be here with you tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Caprice Edmond, and I am excited to be here with you all today. I am a parent of a child who attends Pinellas County Schools, as well as a former educator employed by Pinellas County Schools. I believe that it's important for staff, parents, and students to be supported, which is why I ran for school board in 2020, to be reelected in 2022. So it's great to be here. I look forward to hearing your questions and having dialogue with you this evening.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Hendrick. I'm the superintendent of Pinellas County Schools, starting my 3rd year in this position. Like the panel, I have a child in our school system, served as a teacher and a principal in our district, and I'm excited to share a little more about our success as a school district and hear your questions and get your feedback this evening.
Thank you. First, I would like to start and do a quick overview of tonight. We will start off with Superintendent Hendrick giving an overview of tonight and of the district. Next, we will conduct a Q&A with the superintendent and board members. Participants, as you came in this evening, you received an index card is in front of you for you to write your questions on. If you need an additional card, or if you have already written a question you would like to ask the board, please raise your hand and someone will come by and pick it up, or you can raise your hand if you would like an additional card. For those online, you can enter your questions in the chat. Following the question and answer, there will be an opportunity for all stakeholders to provide feedback regarding start times. Superintendent Hendrick will give a brief overview. Everyone will have the opportunity to participate in a survey to provide feedback. But during this time, the superintendent and the board members will be present and will continue to speak directly with you, the stakeholders. Superintendent Hendricks, I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. So I'm going to go through a number of slides to give you a brief overview of the school district, how we're doing, some of the things we're working on, and some specific initiatives, and then also start the feedback process. So to start with, you were introduced to 3 of our school board members. We, like all school districts, have elected school board members. We have 7 board members, and we rotate who's on the panel at different times. And so tonight you met 3, but you can see our other 4 school board members on the screen. We are guided by a vision, a mission, and a set of core values. Our vision of 100% student success and our mission of educating and preparing each student for college, career, and life. And we have a set of core values which we operate under in order to achieve that mission. We try to share those core values specifically within our employees, our 13,000 employees, to operate from a sense of everyone moving in the same direction. And it's been an emphasis of mine since I've become superintendent, and we're excited to share those core values with the community. I mentioned 13,000 employees. We are the largest employer in Pinellas County. We are the 9th largest school district in the state. We have over 90,000 students from our pre-K through 12th grade. We also operate our 2 technical colleges, Pinellas Technical College in St. Petersburg and in Clearwater, and in total have 143 school sites. Our board adopted a district strategic plan in 2023, a 3-year plan with 6 guiding principles or priorities. And you can see those 6 there, and I'm going to read them quickly. Academic excellence through innovation, safe and respectful climate and culture, equity with excellence for all, positive staff experiences, strong connections and communication, and fiscal and operational responsibility. And under these 6 priorities are 16 specific goals that we wanted to try to improve upon in this 3-year period. Some of those we worked specifically on in the very first year, making great improvements. Others we knew would take several years to roll out. One of those goals under, for example, strong connections and communication is to continue direct experiences with stakeholders such as this tonight to make sure there's access and availability to the board, the superintendent, and key leadership. And so, of course, we've kicked off this school year. I stopped counting how many days we're on, but I think it's maybe 25 or 26. I'm not sure. But the year is off and running to a great start. You can see a few pictures from the first day of school. But key to that is learning starts right away. These are some pictures from literally the first day of school where students are up and working and reading and learning number sense and getting a great start to the school year. And so I want to focus on really 2 items to talk about our school district. And the first is high expectations. One of the goals in our district strategic plan that our board set is around making our district an A district. School districts in the state of Florida have been graded through the state's accountability system for over 20 years, but our district has always been a B. And so becoming an A was a goal of the district, and it has been for a number of years, and we're very proud to say that this last school year, for the first time, our school district did, in fact, become an A. If you didn't know that, you can look at all these banners that are hanging around all 143 sites, thanking the community, because it is a community effort to make this achievement. This particular slide is a screenshot from the state's website, and if you wanted to see this, you could go to Know Your Schools, just Google that, Know Your Schools Florida, and every school in the district and everyone in the state, as well as each district, has a data page and a set of pages that contain state data. And this one is ours, as you can see, and it shows that district grade of an A, but what it also shows below are those bar graphs of blue, then green, then light green, and then some orange and red at the end. And the blue represents A-graded schools. And so you can see in this last school year, 23-24, a really big jump in A and B schools, and we're really proud of that, and I'll talk more about that data in just a moment. So our district did earn that A grade, and I know this is a little difficult to see, but what is represented on the screen are the 21 A-rated districts in the state. So there are 67 school districts, 67 counties, and then 21, I believe, this last year were A school districts. And that's the first time we've earned that A grade, and it's the first time we've been in the top 15 in the state. You can see where we rank there in terms of that green bar or row that goes across the page. And what's across the top are all the categories that school districts are scored upon. And I'll dig into those in another second, specifically around Pinellas County. But one of the things we've done for years is benchmark ourselves against the 10 largest school districts in the state. School districts that have similar needs and problems and opportunities that our district does. And so those are districts like Duval and Orange, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, all those sort of large districts with 80,000 or more students. And so this year, only Miami-Dade finished above us in that. A few of our neighbors, Palm Beach, Broward, you can see Orange there, were A districts, some of those large urban districts like Pinellas is. But we're proud of our efforts, and we'll continue to move up in those rankings. But locally, those grades are made up really just of students and test scores, which I'll share in a second, but really a compilation of all of our district grades. And so 55 of our schools were A's, 40 were B's, so 83% of our schools were A or B schools. You heard Mrs. Hines say we want every single school to be a great choice for parents, and those grades have been a great reflection of that. Just 20 of our schools were C's, and we had, for the first time ever, no D's and no F's. And that's something we're proud of in a lot of different ways, but you'll see a little more specifically in this chart here. So the grades are made up of these 13 categories, and where you see the black boxes, those are years in which those categories didn't count. And in 2023, you'll see those boxes because we transitioned to new state testing assessments. So the students in the room know about the FAST assessment. Some of them may be even taking them today, as recently as this morning, the first progress monitoring assessment for this year. But we transitioned to those in 2023, and when you make that transition, the state takes a year to reset passing scores and set learning gains in order to make sure that they are equivalent to prior year's tests. And the same happened in 2015 when we transitioned to the Florida Standards Assessment, or FSA. And so you'll see in every one of those categories in 2024, except for graduation rate, our students outperformed any measure that they had in the last decade. And so how did we become an A district? Well, our students did better in every single category and every single grade level across every single school, from becoming more proficient readers to making a year's worth of progress and learning gains, becoming more proficient in science and social studies, and in those categories of acceleration in middle school and high school. And so we're really proud of those efforts across all of our schools, and we'll talk and focus a little bit specifically on one of those new categories, which was third grade English language arts achievement, or third grade reading. So that one is blacked out all the way across until this last year, where you'll see our students earned a 63% proficiency score. The state added that to the state's grading formula because of how important third grade reading is in the trajectory of a child. In the nearly 25 years of the state doing third grade reading as a cut score and a measure of proficiency for students, and parents in the room know that's also a year students can be retained if they're not proficient on that test. The state has analyzed those scores and looked and seen, and we've seen the same thing in Pinellas County, that students who are not proficient in third grade are unlikely to ever become proficient in their academic career. In fact, less than 20% of the students who score not proficient in third grade ever become proficient readers on this test. Does that mean that they can't read? No, that's not what it means. It doesn't mean that they won't graduate high school. It just means that they're constantly behind in terms of becoming high-performing readers. And if they're not high-performing readers, it also limits their opportunities for college. And that, of course, limits their opportunities for what their jobs are in the future and their earnings potential in the future. And that's not to say that there aren't career fields outside of college that aren't extremely profitable for students and their families, but the data shows quite clearly that students who go to college and first graduate high school and then go to a four-year university are much likely to earn a higher salary long term. And so that third grade reading is one that the state put a great emphasis on. And so last year, our students made a huge jump in early literacy in that third grade score. They went from 55%, the prior year cohort, to 63%. And one of the things you might think about when you see this, or you even see the other scores, you might say, well, how did the rest of the state do? Did they make similar jumps? And was this sort of a case of grade inflation? The answer is no, it's not a case of grade inflation. Our students went 7 points above the state average last year when we were just 2 points above it the year before. So they made tremendous growth, and they made growth relative to other students in the state, and so we're proud of that. But one of the focus areas for the board's district strategic plan has been on early literacy for a number of years, and we're starting to see those efforts play out in this third grade reading score. And one of those efforts has been in VPK. Our district has greatly expanded the opportunities for 4-year-olds to take free all-day VPK in most of our elementary schools. Almost all of them have VPK now. And the reason that is so important is one of these slides that's here. And again, I know it's a little difficult to see, but I think you'll get the gist of it. So the graph on the right shows students who, in the blue bar at the very top, completed VPK when they were in kindergarten, when they were 4, and how those students then performed on the third grade reading test last year. So the top bar in blue are those students who completed VPK and then their performance on the assessment, and it's over 70%, 71% proficient. The next group of students in that sort of yellowish light green bar are those students who went to VPK but did not finish VPK. And the reason that number is so large is, if you look to the left, is because those were the students who VPK was interrupted for them in 2020 by COVID. So most of them went for 3/4 of the year but didn't have the opportunity to finish because school shut down. But even though that they were there, they outperformed those students who did not go to VPK. So the bottom group of students there, which performed at about 53% on the third grade reading test, are those students who are not in a VPK program. And of course, it doesn't mean if you don't go to VPK, you won't become proficient. There's students on both sides, obviously students who went to VPK who weren't proficient readers. But on average, just like I said, if you're a strong reader, you have a better chance to go to a 4-year university. The same can be said about participation in voluntary pre-K. And so we know that, and we've poured a lot of resources into our pre-K programs and into kindergarten, first and second grade to really hone in on improving reading proficiency of our earliest learners in our system, because that then leads to a higher third grade, which means you're more likely to stay proficient, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how that then impacts the rest of your schooling career, not just in reading, but in science and social studies and in places in between. So we celebrate those schools in our district that earned over 60% proficiency this last year. This is a list of 50 of our 78 elementary schools that earned over 60% proficient. There are Title I schools on this list. There are non-Title I schools. There are neighborhood schools. There are magnets. There are fundamentals. Really, all kinds of schools in our district earn this. And I want to focus in, I've used this story a couple places, on 2 particular schools on this list. And they are Sandy Lane and Kings Highway. So Sandy Lane and Kings Highway are 2 elementary schools that are literally across the street from each other in the Greenwood neighborhood of Clearwater. And Kings Highway is a magnet school. It's a magnet school for technology. And Sandy Lane is a traditional neighborhood school. And in 2019, the third grade reading proficiency at these 2 schools combined was less than 60%. This last year, Sandy Lane was 68% and Kings Highway was 76%. And so the neighborhood in Clearwater literally changes, and generations can change because students can read in third grade. Their ability to be successful in school for the next decade as they get to 12th grade eventually changes dramatically than the students who went through those schools just 6 years ago. The projection for their families, once they graduate high school and go to college and have a greater earnings potential, changes exponentially. And so I credit the board's vision on this early literacy work, and we will continue to push forward with that. But as someone who's been in our schools for a long, long time, people will know that it's not just about the test scores, although that does drive the A rating, and we're very, very proud of that, and people want their public schools to be an A school district, and they want to be associated with success. We want our students to have a great time in our schools. We want it to be fun. I went to I was in several schools today, but I pulled up to one school and I saw 3 buses, and it was about 10 o'clock. And I ran up as the students were getting on the bus. I said, "Where are you guys going?" I could clearly tell it was a field trip. They said, "We're going to the Mahaffey Theater." And these were students from Ridgecrest Elementary School in Largo. And so I was so excited to see them getting on that bus, because that's one of the things we've really pushed is the student experience in our schools. Schools should be a place for fun. And for those parents who are secondary parents or have had students who are second in middle school or high school, you know that there's a time, and it's normally around 6th grade, where all of a sudden everything is not cool anymore, right? 3rd grade, 4th grade, everything is cool. And about 5th grade or 6th grade, and certainly by 7th, nothing is cool anymore. And so you want school to be fun. You want it to be a place where it's exciting. You want them to have a reason to go to school. And that needs to be in the classrooms in these hallways, but it also needs to be, what are those experiences, whether it's field trips or field days at the school or intramural sports or whatever that is that excites me to come to school. And so we've placed a big emphasis on that in a number of ways, and our board has been loud and clear about, yes, we want our scores to be up, and we want our students to have an experience that's second to none in our schools. And so you'll hear that theme throughout a lot of what we do. One of those areas is also in safe and respectful climate and culture, and making sure our schools are physically safe from safety and security measures, but that students feel mentally safe, that there's an opportunity for them to make connections with their peers, and you can see some of the ways in these pictures that we've done that. But one of the things for sure we expect to hear from you tonight and some of the questions and some of the dialogue is, how are those new safety regulations going in our schools that are new this year? So for those of you who have been parents in the public schools for a long time, you're familiar with locked classroom doors and certainly entry points. But this year, the laws and rules have changed that every single gate and every single door has to be staffed when it's unlocked, including every one of these sets of cafeteria doors and every door on the outside of these schools, at every place on an athletic event at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday, and everywhere in between. And that's certainly changed the interaction for a lot of the public and our teachers and students in school, and we'd love to hear your feedback on that tonight. With our district strategic plan, another piece that our board wanted to see was greater transparency on how we're meeting some of the metrics in the district strategic plan. And so on October 1st, we're going to release for the first time ever a community dashboard that tracks the 16 objectives and these 6 strategic priorities that I just showed you. So look forward to that. You can do district-wide filtering and searching for different metrics. And I'm going to quickly just roll through those 6 priority areas. The first, academic excellence through innovation, and it really is about student achievement. You'll be able to filter by all of those tests. Our Bridging the Gap plan, if you want to filter on any of the poverty, on anything in ethnicity, in race, anything there related to any test, any subgroup, students with disabilities, you can do that on our website coming up in just a few short weeks. This is the one for safe and respectful climate, includes out-of-school suspensions, office discipline referrals, student attendance, and again, you can filter through a number of metrics. For Equity with Excellence for All, it looks at all of our school grading areas, as you can see, and allows you to filter by different subgroups. So again, by poverty level, by students with disabilities, by our English learners, and those metrics on screen will change as you filter for different groups or grade levels or different parts. In priority 4, positive staff experiences, just as we want our students to have those positive experiences, similarly we want our staff. And we've done a number of ways to try to promote and encourage that. I mentioned our core values earlier. We've rolled out a number of employee recognition programs in this manner to look at positive staff experiences and be competitive to recruit the very best teachers and staff for our students. And some of the metrics that we measure in those goal areas are in that dashboard. In strong connections and communication, there's a number of different ways that we measure that. Some of that is how do we partner mentors and volunteers. You heard from our board members, that's one of the ways they first became attached to our schools. Last year, you'll see one of the metrics is what is the value of those volunteers in our schools. I think it was close to 500,000 volunteer hours, which is the equivalent of a $17 million donation by volunteers. You can see partnerships and different things on those screens, in addition to some specific business partners and organizations and groups that we partner with and how we do that. And then the use of our referendum funds, which I'm going to touch on in a little bit as well, and you'll see that in that dashboard. And then last but not least is the fiscal and operational responsibility. And in particular, this year, one of the big goals is making sure that as the pandemic era funding and those stimulus funds end, which is in, I think, 12 days on September 30th, we have to make sure that there's no fiscal cliff, which we've done, but all of the ways in which our board has publicly discussed that are listed here, and links to those in our plan. And so another big area, kind of going back to that safe and respectful climate, has been around digital responsibility. And the board tasked us with rolling out a new cell phone policy for our district this year, but not just the rules of when can you have it, when can't you have it, and the consequences that go along with that, but actually teaching our students how to use all of those tools that they have at their fingertips responsibly. So powering up learning, but powering down those distractions. And last year, as we did these listen and learns, we asked families for feedback on the cell phone policy. We asked them for feedback on what is it that you'd like to see in the policy, but also how do we best educate? And that's what we heard from our parents. They wanted the school system to educate students on why use of cell phones is concerning and how those algorithms can actually change the way that you interact and the lifestyle that you lead. And so we've started that process this year with a whole campaign, including, yes, communicating out that initial change in cell phone policy and rolling that out for teachers and parents and students, but then continuing with how do we actually teach those things? And so in our schools this year, there are digital responsibility lessons, both for students and also families that have been rolling out, and they're age appropriate. So what happens in a first grade classroom is different than what happens in, say, fifth grade, and certainly in middle school and high school. And included in that is also opportunities for students to lead these lessons in our schools. And so you're probably familiar with our Say Something Week, which is going on either this week or last week, depending on your school, across the district. And students have, through our Save Promise Clubs, done a lot of activities to generate ways for students to interact with one another outside of using phones, and how do they do that in our schools. And we have a Digital Citizenship Week coming up across the district in October. So we're excited about that change this year, and we're interested to hear how that's going from your different stakeholder perspectives tonight. So I also want to touch tonight on our Pinellas County Schools referendum. We have had a referendum in our school district voted on by the property owners in Pinellas County, or voted on by all citizens, since 2004. We were one of the first 2 school districts in the state to have a property tax referendum, and it goes specifically to recruit and retain quality teachers in our school district, enhance reading programs, art and music programs, and have up-to-date technology. It is governed by an independent citizens committee that ensures money is spent as the voters intended. And as I mentioned, Pinellas County voters have approved this every 4 years, so 5 different election cycles since 2004. That independent citizens committee is made up of these groups that you see on the screen: the League of Women Voters, the Pinellas County Council of PTAs, the Pinellas County Education Foundation, the Pinellas Realtors Organization, the Concerned Organization for the Quality Education of Black Students, or COQUEBS, the Arts for Complete Education, and the Pinellas County Economic Development Council. They meet every quarter. It's a public meeting. It's recorded. You can see all the minutes and the conversation on our website. And their task is to make sure the school district is spending this money exactly how the voters have intended. You can see the history of passage rates for the referendum, including the highest ever in 2020, which was 79% of voters approved of the Pinellas County Schools referendum. In the most recent annual report, which was in the 2022-23 school year, last year's report will come to our school board in January from the Referendum Oversight Committee. About $60 million was collected. $44 million of that went directly to teacher salaries. So every teacher salary in the district in this particular school year included $5,700 of salary, not including benefits, directly to teachers, every single teacher. $11 million went to programming in reading, arts, and technology. And then, as is required by law, we share that money proportionately with charter schools. And in this particular year, that was $4.6 million. And charter schools must spend the money in the same method as traditional public schools do. And the Referendum Oversight Committee also monitors their spending and holds charter schools accountable in the same way. And so the referendum has, as I mentioned, over 20 years now of local funding for local control, meaning that this money stays specifically in Pinellas County. The rest of our state funding, Florida has an equalized funding method, so every school district in the state gets a per pupil allocation that is the same based on property tax. But that means that some districts pay more in property tax to support their public schools than others, and we are one of those districts because we have a high population and high property values. Our district has annually paid more into our per pupil expenditures, but we don't get to keep all of that money per se. The referendum funds we do. So those funds are collected locally, they stay locally, and that's one of the highlights of that. Heavy accountability and transparency. It's created great student experiences for all of our students, and it is shared proportionally, as I mentioned, with charter schools. However, we are looking at a change in the referendum this year. And so for 20 years, we have gone out and asked the voters for a half mil, and this year we are asking for 1 mil. And one of the reasons we're doing that, I'll show on the next slide, but it is consistent with other counties. So we were the first ones to have this in 2004, and for about 15 years, we were the only local district to have a property value tax that supported teacher salaries, and so we had the highest teacher salaries for a long, long time. Other districts then added a referendum, and so we're going to try to catch up with them in a second. The referendum proposal this year will include still money towards teachers for teacher supplements, as we've always done, but what we want to include is now including support staff in that referendum. The referendum has always just been for teachers. We want to include all of our support staff, and so that includes bus drivers, food service workers, front office clerks, bookkeepers, our school safety officers, school resource officers. Everyone who's not a school administrator or district administrator is considered support staff. And so you can see the breakdown of that there. So why this change? Well, you can see on the screen here, if you look at the local school districts, each school district, Hernando, Manatee, Pasco, and Sarasota, all have a 1 mil property tax referendum. Hillsborough is going out for a vote in 2024 for that same 1 mil. Ours has been at half a mil for a long, long time, and so we want to become consistent with surrounding districts. But to the idea of taxing and where does taxes stand as it relates to public schools, we are the only school district included in that same local group that does not have a sales tax to support public schools. Each of these counties has a sales tax to support capital projects, building maintenance, renovations to school districts, and they vary in terms of what they are. For example, in Pasco County, there is a penny for Pasco, much like a penny for Pinellas that you're familiar with that we've had for a long, long time. And in Pasco, 45 cents of every dollar collected goes towards public schools. In Pinellas, that's not the case. Our penny for Pinellas goes to our county commission, and then they spend it as needed. We also have no impact fees on new construction, and while we don't have a lot of massive new construction in terms of things like Lakewood Ranch or large developments in Pasco that you might see, we do have a lot of construction that goes up in Pinellas County that you may have seen. And while there may not be children in those $2 million condos, there certainly are taxpayers, but we don't collect taxes on that for public schools, only in our referendum tax in the operating mill. And so what might that look like for homeowners? So right now, homeowners of on an average single-family home in Pinellas County, the average assessed value is about $221,000. So that's not what someone would sell their house for, but that's the assessed value, what you pay taxes on after a homestead exemption, perhaps to save our homes cap. And so this 1 mil would be $221 per year, about $18 a month. Currently, that same homeowner is paying about $110 a month in a half mil. What would the proposal impact be? So right now, based on the 23-24 tax roll, so I showed you the 22-23 was about $5,700 per teacher salary. This year it's about $6,300, or the 23-24 school year was about $6,300 of every teacher's salary was from the referendum. Based on this proposal, it would be about a $4,000 increase per teacher in salary. And so that would get us up towards those other districts that I mentioned earlier in terms of 1 mil. We would add a supplement for support staff. That would be about $3,000 for every support staff member. Funding for programs would also increase about $6 million. And then the proportionate share for charters would increase as well, again, spent on those same metrics. And so it's a significant impact for our employees for a small increase for homeowners per month. The important part of the referendum, though, is this. All referenda, just like anything on a ballot, is either a yes or no vote. And so we have to go out by state law every 4 years for the school district referendum, and it either passes or it doesn't pass. And so if it passes, the new language applies, that 1 mil referendum with those opportunities for support staff and teachers and programs that I showed. If it fails, we have nothing, right? The whole referendum goes away. So it's not is it a half mil or is it a full mil? It's either a mil or it's no tax, right? And so that's a little bit of a risk, and one that we understand, and our board had long conversations about in the public. But our board voted to put this on the ballot 7-0 unanimously. We took it to our county commission, which voted 7-0 to put it on the ballot. And you can see, as compared to other districts, still relatively lower taxes compared to other local districts, and its impact and our transparency for 20 years, voters have consistently supported it. And so we look forward to the questions and discussion on the referendum this evening as well. And so last, I wanted to just hit on one of the big themes we wanted to get back from members that are here tonight is school start times. And so legislation changed a year ago to require school districts to change start times in the 26-27 school year following a specific set of rules. And those rules are that middle schools cannot start before 8 a.m. and that high schools can start no earlier than 8:30 a.m. And this new law aligns with sleep research. And if you have a teenager, it's not news to you that teenagers' circadian rhythm and how they sleep, they stay up later, they like to sleep in later. And so the sleep research is pretty clear that that's healthier for teenagers. The challenge locally is that our schools are not set up that way. For decades and decades and decades, we've had our high schools slotted first, sometime in the 7:15 to 7:30 range. We've had our elementary slotted second, around 8:45 or 8:50, and our middle schools slotted last around 9:50 or so, 9:45, 9:30, depending on the school. And so the reason we've had it that way is a number of reasons, but largely includes our school choice programs. Because our school choice programs, we provide transportation to most of those district application programs, and those require long runs sometimes around our district. And the level that has the most school choice and the most parents opting into that school choice is high school. And so our high school bus runs can run anywhere from as long as, believe it or not, an hour and 53 minutes for some students to go to a school choice program, and then obviously shorter as you compact the school district. But if we were to move high schools to that middle time slot of 8:30 or 8:50 or even the last time slot, it would not be possible to run all of those school choice programs without doing one of two things. Either number one, cutting some of the transportation, or number two, hiring more bus drivers, and we think somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 more bus drivers, which would be about a $3 million increase, which we would have to offset somewhere else in our budget. And so we had a conversation with our school board publicly at our workshop this week on this, and it's a long-term conversation, but over the course of the next 10 to 12 months, we have to finalize plans for the 26-27 school year around district application programs and eventually school start times. And so we do want your feedback tonight, a little bit on some potential solutions to that, and we've been piloting some of these over the last couple of school years. One of those would be to combine middle school and high school bus routes. We in fact do that right now for two sets of our middle schools and high schools. We've combined Bay Point Middle School and Lakewood High School for the last year and a half, and we've done the same thing with Eastlake Middle School and Eastlake High School. It's been very successful. One of the reasons why it works pretty well at those two locations is they're at the far end of the county, and the neighborhood patterns are very similar, as are the choice patterns, and so it works well. As we get more towards the middle of the county, it may not work quite as well, but it has worked so far. The second option there, the top center, is to significantly reduce transportation provided for students attending district application programs. In order to meet this mandate, we would likely have to reduce some of those options in terms of transportation. A third option, stated in the center box on the bottom, is to advocate to our state legislator to give us local control, to acknowledge that sleep time research and do the very best we can, but not to completely mandate the flipping or changing of school start times. A fourth option, up in the top right, would be to just simply switch those elementary and high school start times. So put high school in the middle, run elementary first, but elementary schools would likely have to start just like high schools do now at 7:30, maybe some of those even earlier than that, 7:15. Start high school somewhere in that 8:40 range, but again, you'd likely have to condense transportation with that. And then other ideas. We welcome your ideas tonight and throughout the next several months as we tackle this challenge. And so as you start to think about questions, I'll let you know that we'll ask you for some feedback around those start times, specifically in a little questionnaire that we'll put up in a second. But we'd like to start to generate questions and answers from the group that we'll answer here. And so to start the process of how we'll collect those and the process that we'll do that, I'll pass it back to Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrick, for that overview and information on how stakeholder feedback is being used to guide the district. We will now move on to our question and answer portion of the evening. We have up to 45 minutes allocated on our agenda for this. We're going to try to get through as many questions as possible in the time provided. So once again, if you need an additional index card or are already written your question, please just raise your hand and a staff member will be by to collect it or provide you with an additional card. For those online, please type your questions in the chat and a staff member will read your questions submitted online aloud. I will be reading the questions aloud and will give the superintendent and board members an opportunity to respond. The board and the superintendent are committed to a standard of civility and decorum in conducting our community meetings. This includes refraining from clapping or making audible noises during or after a speaker or staff member comments. We appreciate you assisting us in maintaining a civil and constructive environment this evening. It is everyone's responsibility to ensure decorum, respect, and civility for all who are present. Lastly, please note that this meeting and all comments will be broadcast live on the internet and the video will be publicly archived. Members of the public may always communicate with the board and the superintendent through their email addresses. The school board is at board@pcsb.org and the superintendent at super@pcsb.org. So if anyone at this point, if you have a question, please raise your hand and a staff member will be by to collect the questions and we'll begin our question and answer portion. Our first question, research makes it clear that it's EQ, not IQ, that is a greater indicator of school life success. The ability to access executive function skills in order to grow and learn what our teachers are delivering is critically important. What do you think we have in place to ensure skills of X function,
Sure, I'll go first. So, I gave a graduation speech 5 or 6 years ago. I was high school principal at Northeast High School for 9 years, and after I left, the next year the senior class asked me to come back and give a speech, and so I did, and I was really honored to do so. And at the time, I oversaw academics for the school district, and so essentially that means you have to make sure that students learn the Florida standards, right? The standards that the state has set out. But my speech was about two types of standards, and it relates to this question. It was about, yes, our job is to teach the academic standards, right? But at the same time, what I tried to emphasize when I was a high school principal and a high school teacher, and similarly now, is what is the standard of excellence that we want for ourselves and how we treat one another and how we behave in our schools and how we operate. And I postulated to the students and parents that really that's one of the ways that parents choose schools. They choose it based on the academic reputation, but they just as much choose it based on, is this school going to keep my child safe? Are they going to grow and learn socially? Are they going to make connections with friends? Are they going to leave that school better off than when they came, not just academically and on a test, but really holistically? And essentially that's a little bit of that same question. How do our students function executively, manage their emotions, grow socially, do all those things so that they can become better learners? Because if I'm hungry, I'm not going to learn as well as if I'm fed. If I'm angry, I'm not going to learn as well as if I feel at peace and calm, right? And so there's a whole host of ways in which we do that, from starting with breakfast, right? So we have breakfast in every one of our schools. Even if a bus is late, we find ways to get students who need food and who are hungry because they didn't get it at home, that opportunity in the morning. And then we continue throughout the day, right? What are those different ways? And so there's a lot of different ways. One of the ways, for example, is through this digital citizenship curriculum. That, there are some state standards on technology and how to use technology, but we are amping that up to a different level to say we really want students to understand that. Another way, for sure, is in our emphasis on restorative practices as a school district. And what that essentially means is, how do we set the table for students to learn? And one of the ways that we do that is through, and especially in our elementary schools, morning meetings or circles. How do we get students comfortable in having conversations with one another What happens when someone's been harmed or wronged or there's been conflict? How do we get people to get back on the same page? Yes, we consequence all the time, but how do we also get people to restore themselves and get back in a classroom and be successful, that we don't harbor these things forever, or at least not in the immediate future? So there's a whole host of ways that we do that. We have different curriculum that is used for that. That curriculum is taught by school counselors. It's taught sometimes by social workers. It's taught school-wide in our positive behavior support systems. And in fact, somewhere in here I saw PBIS earlier. Maybe it's hidden by the screen, but every one of our schools has a positive behavior support system, and it's an expectation that that's implemented. It's part of their school improvement plan. We train on it. We monitor it so that there's a reward system for students and staff to act and behave and have a school climate and culture of one that we can all be proud of. So that's just a few of the ways. I know our board can probably chime in on this a little bit more, but it is an expectation. That's that second priority, safe and respectful climate and culture, and then developing those individual student functioning skills so that they can be successful. Some students need very little of that most times. Some need it only in a time of crisis. Some need it every 15 minutes. It just depends on what students bring to the table.
Thank you, Superintendent Hendrick. I'd just like to add that we believe in addressing the needs of the whole child. And as Superintendent Hendrick highlighted, there are many things that the school district does to support children and families, as well as providing professional development to staff. One of the things I think is important to highlight is our partnerships as we promote the wraparound services that students may need outside of school. And then last but not least is our ESE department, which can help support parents through the IEP 504 process. Thank you for your question.
I think I would just share that as a mom, what my experience has been in our schools on this, and it's been really, really positive. My children were blessed to go to a really beautiful preschool that was all about creative play and getting on the ground and resolving differences. And I thought, what's it going to be like when they go into kindergarten, you know, in this big school? And what's amazing is that, you know what, it's been the same. They have had teachers all along the way that help them resolve the differences with their classmates, that help them talk about it, that help them stop and understand what they're feeling and what to do with those feelings. I'll never forget my now 8th grader came home in like 3rd grade, and he had this bottle of this jar that had water and sand in it, and he shook it up and he said, "Mom, this is what our brain is like when we feel crazy and mad." He said, "But wait 10 minutes. And sure enough, all the sand settles. And he said, "Look, now we're calm and now we can make good decisions, you know, or we can also take some breaths." I thought, okay, we're doing okay. So those are just a couple things. And then I know that, you know, Lakewood Elementary has the focus on health and wellness. And I saw 4th graders drawing the brain and explaining to me about the fight or flight, you know, and this and that. So there are a number of ways that we do address this. That doesn't mean it's not harder for some kids and easier for some kids and what they're being modeled in their homes, which I don't know about y'all, but sometimes we all have hard days, right? And so, you know, all those kinds of things they bring with them to school. And so just trying to address those and keep everybody doing better. But I do believe that it is something that Pinellas County Schools cares about, talks about, works towards diligently.
Our next question. Online question: can I switch my child to a magnet school now? If no, what is the time frame?
So parents can apply for a number of school choice options at any time. At this time of year, it's all based on availability. So you could apply to any magnet that you wanted right now, and if there's a space available, we would grant that to you at the particular grade level. Similarly, you can apply for a special attendance request to go to a non-district application program school, a neighborhood school, anytime throughout the year. And if there's space available, we provide that. And so really, anytime during the year, you can do that. The best time, of course, is as we plan for the next school year. So that district application process is starting to ramp up. Schools are starting to have open houses. In fact, right before we started tonight, I got a phone call because our next fair is coming. So they called all the parents And so you'll have that opportunity here this fall to choose school for next year, and that process will come in January, the specific window. But you can do it year-round, visiting our website and making those applications.
Final call for questions. Okay. The question is there a set stop limit for arterial bus routes? And they want to know, why can't a student be assigned to an alternative stop if parents are anyway responsible for the transportation to the stop?
Yeah, Dr. Brown, can you repeat that first part of the question?
Is there a set stop limit for arterial bus routes?
Yeah. So it depends on the number of students that are on the route. And so that was one of the methods that we updated and changed to get our busing to be more efficient, was to have more defined arterial stops. And so most of the arterial stops are now at our middle schools. And so there is certainly a limit of students to be on the bus. There are some limits, but they're really locally set. There's no state guidance on that. You don't have to provide transportation outside of neighborhood. And so how you provide magnet transportation, which is what the arterial stop is referencing, is really locally controlled, set through policy by the board. And it's really piece by piece. So when we started the arterial stops 2 years ago, or reenacted them, we started with about 21, and then we added to 28, and then we went to 31, and we continue to look to see what's best. But in terms of, can a parent, the second part of the question, can you ask for a different stop and location? There are some guidelines that we do the closest one to the house for a variety of reasons, and so we hold truth to that, including on neighborhood stops as well.
Next question. Bus drivers had a substantial pay raise a few years ago. How was that possible without referendum funds?
Yeah, so I'll go first and then I'll let the board chime in. So, every year the school district receives funding, and it's up to myself and our staff to recommend a budget to the board. But the board can set priorities on that budget. And so it's like any household budget. You can spend more on electricity, you can spend more on food, you can spend more on travel. But in order to do that, you have to reduce somewhere else. And so when we made the decision to really try to improve transportation, we allocated more resources to that, which means we didn't spend them somewhere else, obviously. And so we did that. We were able to do that, and the board gave us clear direction that we have to be able to recruit bus drivers better. So every year we give raises to employees, or we try to. This year it's been a 3.25% raise. And so that same amount of money could have gone towards hiring more bus drivers and giving a lower raise, say, 2.5% or 2% raise, or it could have gone to more curriculum, or it could have gone to, more furniture in our classrooms, or what have you. But we've really tried to push towards salaries, and that particular year there was an emphasis on transportation.
I was just going to mention that since the last couple of questions were around transportation, some of you might remember that 2 or 3 years ago, we were starting every day around 40 bus drivers short. And then you add in the number of bus drivers that might call in sick, or God forbid, take a vacation day, or things like that, right? So we were starting every day with buses not able to be driven, and so other bus drivers have to cover those routes, and we were having students be chronically late to school. There were some students, or chronically late home. There were some students who were missing first period every day. How on earth are you going to learn algebra if you miss the class every day, right? We had students who were chronically late getting picked up because of this bus driver shortage. It was having a significant impact on the academic experience of our students. We had to make changes, had to. And so one of them was these arterial stops, these arterial routes that just affect the choice schools, the magnet schools, and then also along with the bus driver pay. I will tell you that my son takes the bus to middle school. Yesterday morning he missed the bus. You know why? It was early. Sorry, but I find that very interesting. Apparently, I don't know, it was 5 or 6 minutes early or something like that. So much rather have that problem than having it be as chronically late as it was going to be. But we also know that transportation really impacts all of us every day, for those of us who have bus riders especially. But these start times, when we get into this next section where you can give us your input on that, that's going to affect all of us as parents. It's going to affect our community. It's going to affect our work. It's going to affect our roads in the morning. If we, shifting those high school start times to that 8:30 time frame also means we have all the high school drivers on the road at the same time that the heavy commuters are on the road too. So you'll be on the road with all those high school drivers as well as the buses as well. So it does impact our day-to-day experience of life. So we definitely want to hear from you on that subject.
Okay, if those are all the questions, I want to thank everyone who submitted a question and for being here tonight. And especially thank Mr. Hendrick, school board. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll just jump in real quick, Dr. Brown, before you do the wrap-up. So 2 really important things. Number 1, all 4 of us will be here for individual questions as long as anybody in the room would like. And then second, we do want your specific feedback on the start times discussion and magnet discussion. So there's a QR code here. I know there's also one online for those who are listening at home. So please, please, please make sure that you do that. And I'll pass it back to Dr. Brown.
And now I would like to officially thank Superintendent Hendrick, Chairperson Hine, Ms. Peters, and Ms. Edmonds for being here tonight to answer the questions from you, the stakeholders. And of course, as Superintendent Hendrick said, they will remain here to be able to answer your questions and to just speak with. We thank you all for being here and coming out tonight to our Superintendent's Listen and Learn series. Thank you and good night.